So now let's get into actually looking at Google Analytics. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to our browser, right? We're going to type analytics.google.com. Now, if you're already logged into Google, what it's going to do is automatically log you into Analytics. In case you're not, it'll give you this sign up kind of a page. Now, you go to sign up, you put your information in, and your Analytics account will start. Now, in our case, because I already have an account set up, I'm going to use that login, and I'm actually going to go to the dashboard. Now, when you first come into Google Analytics, right, you get a dashboard. On the top left, if you see where I'm pointing, you get to see which company you're talking about. In my case, I'll have multiple companies, so I'll click on this. And here you'll see multiple things that I can track. Now, that's because I've been given access to track multiple things, so I can see all of them here, right? In your case, you may not see this many options. You probably only see the company you're tracking. So here, it's tracking one of my other companies, eTailing India Expo. And on the right-hand side, you see their dates that it's showing you information for, okay? On the top right, above the dates, it has more options around what Google products to go into, if you have any notifications, anything about your account, etc. And on the left-hand side is your menu bar, right? This is all the different things that we're going to be able to see using Google Analytics. And what we'll do is we'll kind of start off with talking about one of my other companies, right? eTailing India Expo, because I have data in there. So we'll start off looking at that. Now, the front screen that's brought to us is showing some basic information. I think we've covered what kind of information we should be looking at when it comes to analytics, right? So here, one of the first things it's showing us is the number of sessions. You look at it, it says 619 sessions, 497 users, 1,430 page views, which means that between the page views and sessions, there is 2.31 page views per each session, okay? So that means each person that's coming on each session on average visits 2.31 pages on our site. And they stay an average of 5 minutes and 5 seconds and a bounce rate of 57%. Now, some of you may wonder, bounce rate, we talked about it. This is when people leave without moving on, right? This is considerably high. Now, depends on what site you have and how much engagement you have with that user, right? Some sites have one-page sites, and you may see the bounce rate being 80-90%. But then there are sites that have e-commerce sites, for instance. If the bounce rate is 57%, it's probably pretty bad, right? Here we're talking about an expo site. Our site is actually most of the information is on a single page. So if I see somebody on average being there 5 minutes and still the bounce rate being 57%, I'm pretty much okay. The other thing on the right-hand side, we see how many new users we have versus returning. Now here it says 69% new visitors and 30% returning visitors. Now, when you're an e-com site or any other site, you probably want your returning visitors numbers to keep on growing, right? 30% is not bad. Still, I would probably over time shoot for at least a 50% return visitor to new visitor ratio so that I know that people are engaged, people like our site, and they're visiting us again and again. So again, this is the basic information we get to see about each site here. And one thing that we mentioned earlier also, Google Analytics is free, right? And this is free information we get to see. We don't need other products to actually start off analytics for our own site. The chart on top can again be changed. Currently it's showing number of sessions over per day. I can change that to hourly, and I can see how many sessions hourly it shows. Okay, you see the information all change. I can click weekly. It'll show me weekly. And again, right now we're only looking at 1 week. So it's showing a one straight line. But if I change the dates up on top, maybe I'll start with March 1st and I'll apply it. What's going to happen is you'll see this chart change. Okay, so you see those different points have come up for each week. So we can see how our sessions are changing week to week. Okay, and this week is not realistically gone beyond 1 or 2 days. So we see the chart drop off considerably. By Friday, Saturday, it should be more to the level that it should be. Now moving down, we see one of the first things in demographics is our language. And if you're right-hand side, it shows English US. 76% of the sessions are from that. English Great Britain, 19%. English India, 1.23%. Now you wonder, we're pretty much an Indian site. Why would it show English US at 76%, right? And that's because most of us, in our browser, there's a setting. We can choose our language, right? We can indicate which country we're in, and we can say we're in India and we still want to see English, okay? But we don't. We always pretty much leave it to the US, right? And this is why it's showing 76% of sessions are from the US English, okay? But that's kind of, like I said, it's not correct because we don't change it. It could be very different if we're all going in and changing it. The other thing we can look at is where is our traffic coming from, right? What are the demographics around country? Again, no surprise, 87.64% of traffic that comes to this site is from India, 3.81% from US, then from Russia, United Kingdom, etc., 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 okay? It's listing up to 10 countries. If there were more, it would show you more if they have some percentage or some visits from other countries. I can even go down to a city level, and I can actually see that Mumbai drives about 25.5% of traffic, Bangalore 18.5, New Delhi something, and then you see number 3 says not set. That's because somewhere or another we're not able to track which city the traffic is from. Not just traffic, but where that user is coming from, right? So it just says not set, okay? About 7.5% of it is saying not set. For whatever reason, it could be a browser that's not recognized, or it could be a service provider that's not correctly identified, etc., etc. So we see about 7.5% saying not set. The other thing is, if I click any of these, right? If I click Mumbai, for instance, and if I try to go in, what you're going to see is it's going to come out to be, it's going to show us that, it's going to show us all the different numbers we were talking about for Mumbai, right? How many sessions came out of Mumbai, how many new sessions, new users, the bounce rates, pages per session, etc., etc. So every single point I can drill down and I can see more details on it, okay? So I'm going to go back just because we'll visit that a little bit later. But in each one of these, maybe language, maybe country, maybe city, I can actually drill down to another level and see all the different things about sessions, users, page views, etc. Now, a little more technical information can also be seen, such as browser, which browsers people are using to visit. In our case, Chrome is used about 77.46%, Safari 7.41%, Firefox 7.24%, Internet Explorer 2.64%. So again, these are not surprising numbers, right? Chrome has become probably a default browser for almost everyone, may it be on a MacBook, may it be on a desktop, whatever, right? So Chrome is, about 77.46% here, and then Safari, Firefox, etc. And Internet Explorer, which used to be the leader, is only at about 2.64%, because most of us that even use basically Microsoft products, we don't use Internet Explorer anymore. We end up using Chrome or Firefox. Okay, so again, we're getting to see what browser. Now, browser also tells us a lot of other things, right? For instance, which are the areas that when we're testing our website, where it's working well, which browser should we be looking at? So we want to make sure we look at the 89% of the top traffic, right? So between Chrome, Safari, and Firefox, I'm probably set if my site appears correctly in these 3 browsers and works correctly in this when I'm testing it. So it kind of tells us what else should we be testing and all that kind of stuff. Next thing we can look at is which operating systems are actually accessing our particular website or our mobile app, etc., right? Here, in this case, it says Windows has about 67.71%, Android 13.61%, Mac about 9.28%, iOS 6.81%, Linux, etc., etc., etc. Now again, tells us a lot about what our target is like, right? Target audience that's coming to the website is like. Because in most cases, they're using Windows, so more than likely, they're either on a desktop or a laptop, right, that are using this, because if it was a phone, they would either be on an Android or an iOS, right? Which, number 2 in our case, 13.61% is Android, okay? So again, operating system also gives us more insights beyond just telling us which operating system it is, because it can tell us our TG. In our case, iOS is only 6.81%, which tells us that the TG is very different for us, right? It's not people that are carrying around apples in their hand. So kind of tells us more in-depth things. Next, we can look at which service providers is the traffic coming from. Now in India, there's an issue with the service providers, because if you just look at this list, right, it's not defined properly, right? In our case, U Telecom drives about 7.5%, Then 6.7% says not set because there's no way to tell. Number 3 says internet service provider. Now, why would a service provider name itself internet service provider? But unfortunately, these standards are just missing where the service provider has to list itself correctly, right? Look at the one number 9, it says ABTS. Now, who can tell what ABTS is, right? So, because the standards are not clear, this kind of becomes somewhat not so useful to me. In the US, in other countries, when I look at the service providers, a lot of times it becomes more useful because let's say I run a very heavy content site. I may be looking for CDNs, right? Content delivery networks. And I may want to target a particular service provider if they're carrying maybe 10, 20, 30, 40% of my traffic. I may talk to them to see how I can speed up the delivery of my website's traffic through them because a lot of that traffic is going through them. Now here, don't have much option, right? All of them only show about 7.5, 6.5, something percentage like that. Next, we can see some data about mobile traffic, right? What are the different operating systems on the mobile that are coming? Now, we already saw this as part of the overall operating system, but again, we can see here Android out of the mobile. Android drives about 65% of the traffic. iOS drives about 32% of the traffic, and then Windows and all that drive very little traffic, right? Again, so we can see much more in depth about mobile traffic as well. What service providers from the mobile? Again, not set 18.32%. Like I said, no set standard, and as such, we see all kinds of issues here. There's no way for us to group and say, even look at number 3 and 4, those are both say BCL, but one says West Second for something, the other says Node D something. So again, no standardization, so we can't really use this data. One very important part about the mobile side is the screen resolution, right? Now look at it. 49.48% of people use a screen resolution of 360 by 640. Another 16% 375 by 677. Now this tells us that when we're designing something for the mobile screen, right? What is the resolution that we should be testing on, or we should be looking that it looks fine and it works fine on? So you look at the top 80, 90% again, right? You go by those rules and you say, does it work fine for these resolutions, right? In our case, my first and foremost is to look at 360 by 640 and say, does it work well on that? Okay, so we go through, let's say the top 3, 4. Say, does it work well on there? If it does, great. We're good to go. We worry about the other ones a little bit later because we're not sure how many, very small percentage of people would be using that. So again, this is the main dashboard. We see basic information, right? On the left-hand side where the detailed menu is there, we can see a lot more different things. Now, before we move forward, like I was pointing out, on the top right, there's a way to change the date range. We can actually look at data across anything that we want, right? Wherever it started tracking. So in our case, if I started tracking it for Feb 1st, right? I can say, listen, show me the data from Feb 1st onwards, and it's going to do that, okay? So if you look at it, suddenly all the data has changed, and there's a spike that happened early in Feb for us that is not happening now, okay? There are multiple reasons, but we can see that trend. But again, the point was that we can see date range from anywhere to anywhere, right? As long as we're starting to track it. The other cool feature about the date range is you can compare it to a period also. So let's say that I want to compare March 1st to April 17th to the time period in Jan to Feb, right? Like it picked up. And I can say apply. Now what's going to happen is it's going to create 2 sets of charts for me, okay? If you look at it, now there's a blue and an orange. What it's doing is telling me the blue is between March 1st and April 17th, and the orange is between Jan 12th and Feb 28th. And it's comparing the 2 periods. So we can see how our traffic changes, how our page views change, all of that kind of stuff between the 2, okay? And here it's showing you, what is the difference, right? There's actually a difference of 61% in sessions, 56% in users, 9% in bounce rate, etc., etc., etc. So again, if you go down, everything has been changed and everything shows us comparisons, right? Nothing is just simply showing us numbers, right? If I go back to, let's say, language, it's showing me different comparisons, right? Here. So what is the different comparison? If I go down to which cities people came from, again, it's going to show me different comparisons. So if you look at it, March, which was 25%, Jan to Feb, Mumbai actually drove 42% to this site. Okay, so again, we're not only able to see different ranges, but we're also able to compare against something. So I'm just going to take the comparison out just to make things easier as I go through the site, right? Now let's move on to the left-hand side. Here, the first option that we see is the customization option. Now again, guys, I think we look at this in maybe more advanced versions because this allows us to customize the look and feel, what kinds of data do we see on our dashboards, etc. So let's get to that later. First, let's understand what are the different things that is available to us. And the first and foremost option that I want to look at is something called real time. Now, this is something that was added to Google Analytics not too long ago. What this is basically ability to track and see real-time data. So if I click on it and go to overview, what I'm going to see is who's on our site at this exact moment and what are they doing. Okay, so if I look at it, there's 4 people that it shows that are active on the site right now. All of them are from a desktop, okay, 100% of them. Here it says that there's no keywords that we can track. We don't know if they came from social, and we don't know where they were referred from. But on the right-hand side, it also shows us where they're currently on our website. Out of the 4, 3 are actually on the home page, as I can tell. Okay, and then one of them is on an internal page somewhere. Okay, if I move down a little bit, it also shows me where they're coming from. Right here, it's showing me, probably this is the New Delhi area, etc. There's 2 people from there, and there's 2 active users from Mumbai. Okay, so again, we get to see here Sonipat, 1 person, New Delhi, 1 person. So what we get to see is exact data of what's happening in real time. If I go down to traffic sources in real time, it will show me where these people came from. 2 of them came from organically through Google. Okay, 2 of them came directly, so they typed in our URL and came. Okay, I can look at their behavior, what are they doing. Okay, so here they are. Like I said, 1 is on the home page, 1 is on an internal page. I can look at the page views in the last 30 minutes that they had, and you can see all the different pages that they visited. Okay, let's see if we can see any conversion data, which I'm sure we will not because this is not a site. If you look at it, it says, and conversion for us is when they make a payment for something, right? So here it says 0, so that means none of them are converting. So again, a lot of data that we can see for real-time users, which didn't used to exist a while back. Here now again, we're able to see, now you see number of users have actually gone up 1, right? We've had somebody that's visiting us from Visakhapatnam suddenly, so it's showing 5 now. Now let's move on to more detailed data that we can see beyond just the real-time data. So one of them on the left-hand side, if you see, it says audience. Now this tells us a lot about what different audience that is visiting our website, okay? So here, if I first click on just the dashboard, this dashboard is pretty much the same as the one we saw on the home page, okay? Now if I click on active users, right? These are basically giving me data on how many active users do we have. So in a day, we have about 64 active users, in a week about 497, 14 days 844, 30 days 1746. Now this will be different for everybody, right? This is not going to be the same for everyone, right? A site like a Snapdeal or an Amazon or a Flipkart may be showing millions of active users a day, okay? Here we're showing much lesser because this is a site that actually carries lesser. If I change this data, and just for the sake of changing it, I'm just going to quickly change it to something else and just show that this data can change, okay? So I'm going to go to one of the other websites that we have, and if you look at it, suddenly the active user data is going to change, okay? Here, if you look at it, daily it's 91, 7 days 488, 30 days 2073. It's almost double of what the other one was showing. But this is because this is a site that gets visited more often, probably has more traffic levels, etc. That's why we're seeing that, okay? Now I'm just going to go back because I want to make sure I use the one that I continuously use so that we don't lose track of the data. So, like I was saying, these are your active users. Now, again, there are other new features that keep on getting added in analytics, and this is a cohort analysis that they're adding. So again, once we're a little more advanced into this, we can actually see this analysis and how it can be used for us. There's a thing called User Explorer. okay? It actually tells you the client IDs, okay, where they came from, how many sessions they had, and all that kind of stuff, okay? Bounce rates, what revenue they're generating, etc., etc. But let's look at more interesting things for us, right? Demographics, right? We started looking at age. What is the age demographic that we have? And I on purpose skipped the overview because I wanted to actually just see the detail. I'll go look at the overview again. If you look at it, it's saying that 46% almost of the traffic is between 25 and 34 for us. And about 30% 18 to 24, 14.5% about 35 to 44. So if you look at the top three categories, that's pretty much all of India, right? Very little, maybe 10% total is in the rest of the age brackets. But this is what's interesting, right? This is exactly what we always talk about. That's where the web traffic is coming from. It's from this age of 18 to basically 44, mostly from 25 to 34 is what visits an e-commerce or an e-commerce related website in India. So again, we can see all the different age groups that come here, okay? And we can see all different information about them. Again, new sessions, new users, bounce rates, etc., etc. So if we're able to find an analysis of maybe the bounce rates are lower in one section and more in other, we can figure out why that is because it may be content related, okay? In our case, it's pretty much consistent, right? 50 to 60% across all of them. I'm going to go back to overview just for a second, just so you can see what the overview looks like, okay? Again, the overview tells us what are the different age brackets, telling us the same thing that we're seeing in detail. And on the right-hand side is showing me the difference between the gender, right? How many male, 59% versus 40% female. Okay, so if I go back to gender on the left-hand side, I can actually again see a little more detail around it. So if you look at it, it says that, again, 60% male, 40% female, new sessions, what percentage are new sessions, what are the bounce rates like, and what are the pages per session, etc., 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 right? Again, no real difference for us between male and female, but a lot of websites have a huge difference where the female audience is probably more engaged, has much higher average session duration versus male, and probably opposite in some certain ones, right? So again, we can see all that analysis here. In our case, not much difference, so we don't worry about it, okay? But what I'm glad about just to see is that there is at least 40% females coming through. Now, some of you may wonder, how do they know age and gender, right? We've never mentioned age and gender when visiting a website. So I think, if a lot of you realize Google uses a lot of the other properties that they have, right? Maybe Google Maps, maybe Gmail, maybe others, where they have the ability to track your gender, your age, and other things about you. And they make sure that they link it back to analytics here, right? That's the only way for them to know, right? There's nowhere that when we go to a website, we mention that, hey, I'm 40 something or I'm 20 something or whatever. So this is way of Google to use its properties to kind of get to that information, okay? So let's move on to interest. I think this is, to me, this is always very interesting because how do they know a lot of these interests that they're tracking, right? If you look at the traffic that comes to this website, 4.3% of them are technophiles. That means they are people that are very much interested in the technology, right? Then 4% movie lovers, okay, out of which South Asian films, 3.95% business professionals, 3.85% travel buffs, TV lovers, avid investors, etc., etc., etc. So it tells me the affinity, okay, of the people that are coming to my website. Now here, the other thing I want to point out, they're only able to track 66% of the sessions, okay? That's just because a lot of times the information is not available or they're just not able to track it. So they're saying that 66% of the sessions they're tracking, and these are the affinities of those people that are coming. Here, on the right-hand side, it talks about in-market segment. Basically, for the traffic that's coming, what they're saying is what are these people are in the market for, right? So for instance, 5% are looking for some sort of employment. Now, they're not particularly looking for employment on our website, but they're in the market for employment. 4.29%, and they're looking for some kind of financial services, 3.82% in education, 2.95% they want to travel or looking for hotels, 2.93% trips, they're looking for trips to India or Asia Pacific, etc. So again, a lot of data that Google is able to gather because they have the ability to look across multiple platforms that they have, right? Multiple properties that they have, okay? So they're able to track that and here, show it to you, Okay, so again, for each one, I can go into details of it. So if I go on Affinity and I look at Technophiles, I can look at exact details about them. Okay, if I click on it, if there are any more details, it would show it to me. So everywhere, right? It can drill down. So here in Technophiles, it can drill down to even age levels and say in Technophiles, what age is people coming. So here you can see in Technophiles, it's mostly 25 to 34. Okay, if I go back, right, I can do this to in-market segments. I can do this to other categories, etc. Right? So again, we're able to see details that we can never imagine that Google would have about the traffic that's coming to us. Now let's look at the geography, right? Just again, we saw the language before, but let's again very quickly just look at it. The different languages that we discussed earlier, locations, right? Here again, we'll see it in a graphical format, right? It's showing us by country, and obviously India is the darkest because that's where most of our traffic comes from. I can click on India, I can drill down, right? Next it's going to show me probably an area, okay, inside India. So yeah, Maharashtra, a region, let's say call it Karnataka, Delhi, Tamil Nadu. I can probably go to Maharashtra and then look at details. Or up here, I can click on city and it'll show me by city, right? Usually people have a question, right? Is it only able to show me 10 because everywhere we only see 10, but that's not true. If you look at the bottom here, it's saying show me rows only 10, right? If I say show me rows 25, it'll show me 25 rows of different cities. And here it is tracking up to 95 cities for us. So I can see details about 95 of them, okay? Not just 25. I can go to next page and see 95 cities. And that's great. I mean, I can get to whatever level. If you look at some of these, right, it's talking about Lucknow, it's talking about Indore, it's talking about Rajkot, Secunderabad, etc., right? Even a city near Mumbai, Kalyan, is showing us how many people are coming from there. So we can kind of drill down to the level, as closest level as possible. I know that a lot of people have asked, in Mumbai, can I go down to a level of talking about different areas in Mumbai, okay? And unfortunately, that's not where Google Analytics has just come yet, right? We can, inside Mumbai, look at Andheri and Malad and Bandra or whatever, right? It goes to the city level and not beyond that, okay? Now, next, what we want to look at is user behavior, right? What is the user's behavior on our site? Again, we saw a lot of this data before, right? New versus returning. How many people are new versus how many are returning? Same data. Again, we see here more things about that data. We can see how often they're coming, okay? And when did they come last, right? There's frequency and recency, right? So here we can see counts of sessions and how many sessions and how many page views, okay? Then what is the engagement that they're having? How long would they, were they on our website? Like I talked about, a person is, let's say, spending 5 minutes now, but how many of them are spending how much, right? Here, you're talking about out of the 3,600 sessions, so we say that 2,057 of them left between 0 and 10 seconds. That's the reason our bounce rates were so high, because people were coming and not finding exactly what they were looking for and left, okay? So you have that. Again, you have details you can find on technology, mobile, like we were talking about. But one of the things that I kind of want to get into a little bit more, just to save time and not get into every single piece, is something called user flow. Now, this is a very unique thing and very cool thing. What it shows you is when a person enters a website, what is the flow that they go through? Now, this is important for multiple reasons, right? One is just to see the journey that a user takes. The other is to tell us few more things, right? One, how should our navigation should be built, right? Because if it's a journey that people take often, we should actually make it easier for them by building a navigation around it, okay? Secondly, it tells us when we have times when there are pages that possibly don't lead anywhere, right? Which are our broken links, as they're called. Because a lot of times, people are going through the journey but then suddenly fall off. Now, why did they fall off? Did they fall off because they just didn't like the content, or they didn't want to move ahead, or they fell off because actually there was no link going forward, okay? So if you look at a lot of these, right, there's no links going forward. So that means that probably something is either broken, or maybe realistically it is the last page in the whole interaction, okay? But a lot of insight you get from user flow, and you can start the user flow as you want, okay? You can start it from some kind of demographic, you can start it from behavior, you can start it from social actions, etc. And let's say, I'll say, okay, listen, I want to start it from a particular page on my website. I don't want to start it from what country. So let's say I started from the home page. Here, let's say 2,600 people entered my home page. Their next interaction is that how many of them went to the, let's say, the registration page, how many went to the agenda page, how many went to the About Us page, etc., etc. And then where did they continue going from there, okay? So user flow is very cool, gives you a lot of input, a lot of insight as to how people are actually engaging with your site, okay? So when you have time, and this would require a lot of time to go through each one of these scenarios and ensure that you're able to track the user's journey, okay? The next area we want to move on to is acquisition, right? This is another big area we're all interested in. Where did our traffic actually come from? So if I go to overview first, right? Let's look at what the overview is showing us. So there's several things. It's showing us all the different channels where our traffic is coming from, right? Here it says organic search, people coming directly, meaning they're actually typing in our URL and coming. How many coming from emails, maybe our campaigns or somebody referring. How many came through referrals from other sites? How many came from social? How many came from paid search? And then how many came from other places, right? In our case, and I'm glad to see this in this case, about 51% of the traffic came from organic search. That's great, right? That means that these people are finding us by searching for something, right? And then about 21% came from direct, 13% from emails, and then social only driving very little, 5-something%, okay? Now, if I go down and click on organic search, what it's gonna do is it's actually gonna show me how did they come, right? Here, which keywords did they type to actually arrive on our website? Now, unfortunately, 75% of it is showing, 98% of it is showing me not provided. That means somehow we're not able to track the keyword that they came through. We know they came through Google, but we don't know which keyword they came from. But if you just keep on going to the bottom, it keeps on showing you all the different keywords that they came from, okay? And the details around each keyword, right? Again, same thing. How many bounced, what are the pages per session, average session duration, etc., etc. Okay? And we can go down to social just so I can show you how the social looks, okay? So here, when I click on social, what it's going to do is it's going to tell me how many came from Facebook, how many from LinkedIn, how many from Twitter, okay? And for each one, again, details as to bounce rates and number of users, etc. Okay, let's go back. Quickly, let's look at referral, just so you can see what the referral site looks like. Okay, these are the sites that refer traffic to us. Now, you look at it, Wikipedia actually referred traffic to this site, okay? Google Mail referred traffic, a site called Eventful, referred traffic. It's even funny, White House referred traffic to it, and things like that, okay? So depending on where your coverage is, they can probably refer traffic to your sites, right? There's a lot of times, it's called referral marketing, where you tell others to list your links, your products, etc. And when they click on it, people will come to your site. And this is how the referral traffic can go up, okay? So a lot of things around referral traffic as well. Now, one thing that I also want to mention is that you can actually link your AdWords account, which is your paid marketing account, to your analytics account. And when you do, and you click on AdWords here, it can actually show you all the data that your AdWords account will show. It will show you here. Now, unfortunately, I don't have that account currently linked. Now, if you look at it in the past, it was linked, but currently it's not showing you anything because currently we're not running any AdWords campaigns to get traffic for us, right? So here it's not showing anything, okay? If I just go to, just to quickly show you that it gives you the ability to link almost everything that you can see in AdWords here, we can actually just go through this. It's the same data to one level that you can get from AdWords, you can get here, okay? If you want, what can happen is you can see the basic data here, then go to AdWords, probably see all the details that you want, okay? Now, one other area that we probably want to look at a little bit more is this social. Now, what Google Analytics did was they built out a whole separate section on social, because they understand that social is going to drive traffic and over time probably drive huge amount of traffic. So they have this thing called your social impact. If you look at it, this is what it's called, right? Your social relationship. So here it tells you how many sessions you had, how many actually came from social referrals, and where from the social area did they come from, right? So here it says that 55% of all my social traffic came from Facebook. And if I click on Facebook, right, it can actually show me which page did they go to, right? Where did that traffic lead to? Okay, so great, right? So I can tell you that when people come from Facebook, where they're actually going. When people come from LinkedIn, where they're exactly going. Again, when you sit with this data and start looking at it, there's a huge amount of insight, huge amount of knowledge that you get about your website and how people are interacting with it. You know, I tell people that you probably have to spend in the initial days and probably over time also a good bit of your time, at least the 1% in the company should be spending 8-10 hours a day on analytics, because even that is less, because it is telling you why people are coming, why they're staying, and if they're leaving, why they're leaving, okay? And if they're staying, where they're staying, how long they're staying, gives you a huge amount of insights of what you should be doing, what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong, etc. So again, recommendation is that a person should be dedicated all the time from day one into analytics just to see what's happening, okay? In social, again, we saw this already, what landing pages people are coming to from different social sites, what is the conversion looking like from social, okay, etc. Now, the other thing we probably want to look at is conversions, right? How are people converting? What are the different goals? Okay, in our case, we have not set much goals, right? But you can actually see what are the different types of goals that you've set, if you've set goals here. Okay, here we only have one goal called make a payment. We don't have any other goals. It could tell you the different URLs, okay, that are paths to that. In our case, we don't see any conversions coming out. Okay, let's look at the funnel. This is a very cool feature called funnel visualization, where people started in the funnel and who ended up or dripped down all the way, right? Here we're seeing it, right? Event checkout is 739 people got into it, okay? 239 exited right out of that page, okay? Then out of the other people, let's say people event checkout front page, there were about 3,434 people there. How many exited? And then who went down the funnel, right? Our funnel is a little bit weird because the site we're looking at is an event site, and the registration or the actual buying of the delegate pass or something happened outside of our website. Now, if this shopping cart was integrated, this funnel would actually look proper, right? We can actually see how people are going through the funnel when they enter the shopping cart and when they exit that shopping cart and who drops out and all that kind of stuff. In our case, we're not able to see that. Goal flow, again, very quickly just show you, seems very similar to what we were looking at the user flow, okay, where people are starting, where they're going, where they started from, all that kind of stuff, again, needs all kinds of analysis, etc. So, again, goal flow looks very much like user flow, right? Tells you where the people started from or came from, how did they get into the funnel, and where they ended up in the funnel, okay? So, very beautiful, but again, needs a lot of time for you to click through each one of these areas, see how people are flowing through it, what are the issues around it, etc., okay? Again, we don't have e-commerce set for this website, but if we did, it would actually tell us shopping behaviors, checkout behaviors, which products are selling, how the sales are happening, etc., etc., etc. So over time, I've seen this progress, right? Even over the last 10 years, nothing like this existed inside analytics 10 years ago. Today, we're starting to see all this kind of data that they're showing you about shopping behaviors and checkout behaviors, etc. Like here, what is a new user doing? What is a return user doing? Okay, when they get into the cart, when they leave the cart, all that kind of stuff, right? Here, this is shopping behavior. If we go to checkout behavior, it can show us how they're going through our checkout pages, what kind of products. Again, in our case, we don't have anything set, but otherwise it would show you by product, what does the revenue look like. I know your ERP systems tell you all of this, but here Google gives you a quick dirty view of it. And if you don't have an ERP, it'll tell you still what is all happening, right? So again, in conversions, we can see e-commerce wise what is happening. Different, again, all kinds of advanced features exist here. I'm not going to go through advanced features because once even getting through the basics will take months and sometimes years to get through. Quick one thing, in the multi-channel funnels, there's something called top conversion paths. This is also interesting to see, right? In our case, because we don't have conversions, we're not able to see. But if there are conversions happening, it would actually show you what conversion paths are working for you, okay? This is great because what happens is you can actually see where you should be concentrating on first, right? Or more on. Time lag, how long it takes a person to convert. Again, in our case, because we don't have data set, it's not able to tell. And what I want to end with is, we talked about all the different things we can track, but you know what? To track all of this, you need to first set the tracking mechanisms, right? And the way it's done in Google Analytics, if I click on admin here, right, it's going to open this administration area for me. Now, the way it's done is that Google gives you a small script to put on every single page of your website. Now, if it's a website that is being custom coded, you give it to your developer, they'll put it on every page. If it's a Shopify or any other type of website, what happens is they simply to ask you to put a tracking code. Now, if I click on tracking info here and go to the first thing called tracking code, you see on top it says a tracking ID. This is the code that they want for you to put. Now, that's given that if it's something that just takes the code. If it doesn't take a code and you have to put a script, you see the website tracking script here? This is the script that goes on every page of your site. Okay, here it's telling me the status that it's receiving information. Okay, so that means it's working. And just for your information, the way this tracking ID works is the first two letters stand for something called universal analytics. Okay, just something that's standardized that Google has. The middle section is actually your account number or your account ID. The last section is the website ID that it's tracking. So inside that one account, I can be tracking multiple websites. So it could be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Here it's showing you one, okay? Because inside this account, I'm only tracking one website, okay? Also on the bottom, if you're doing PHP, it shows you what to do. Again, they give you as much information as possible, but in most cases, we're not gonna go through this ourselves. We'll probably ask a developer to do it, except if we were using one of these SaaS-based solutions, then we can probably put this tracking ID in there and be done, okay? Now, obviously this administrative information gives you a lot more information, right? Here's where we add our AdWords account to it, okay? And we can kind of change things here about what our e-commerce settings are, how do we group certain content together. Again, very detailed information that we can look at, probably not the right time for us to get through each one of these things, okay? I kind of want to end the demo at this point, just saying that in the admin, right now what we want to look at is probably the tracking information. If you want to give user management to people, so that means that other people can access your account, you can add that here. You can look at the basic settings of this particular website here. That's about it, right? This is all that we probably want to cover at this point in the admin, okay? So wrapping up analytics, I just want to quickly make 2 points, and then if you have questions, I'll take it. So the newest of their products from Google is called Firebase Analytics. Firebase is specially made for mobile apps, okay? They used to have functions and features under Google Analytics to do mobile apps. What I've heard and read is that they're going to turn off those functions, and you'll have to use Firebase Analytics for your mobiles. Okay, for mobile apps, not mobiles, for mobile apps. Okay, this analytics gives you very specific information around apps. Okay, the engagement level on the apps, the phones that are being used, the types of features that that phone has, all that kind of information is being tracked through Firebase. Okay, so if the guys that want to actually have an app, you probably want to look at Firebase as well. okay, besides Google Analytics. And for the ones that move beyond the free version, okay, there's something called Google Analytics 360 Suite. Okay, it's a paid one, yes. And this is a suite where they link Google Analytics to all Google products as well. Okay, because as a business, you may be using Google Maps, right? You may be using other Google features in your business. So this product would actually integrate all of it. That's why it's called 360. Okay, this is a paid product. So a lot of large corporations are actually using this, and more they're actually adding functionality to this. Okay? All right. Any questions on analytics? No? Yes.
Does Google Analytics actually analyze your social media like Facebook and Twitters and all that and the activity within that? Or does it stop at a certain threshold?
No, it only knows what traffic comes to your website from there.
Okay.
It cannot analyze any activity on any other platform
They have
except
their own,
YouTube. Because
they
YouTube
have
is
their
theirs.
own internal
Yes.
parameters, and
Yes.
it's blocking Google beyond
Yes.
a certain point.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Ad segment, all leaders in ad segment. In ad segment, what does it do? This particular segment of our customers.
Yes.
What they do?
Yes.
You have to track those.
Yes. Absolutely. So your segment would be there's segmentation, right? So what would happen is maybe you only want to look at people between 18 and 35. Maybe you don't want to look at others. There is a group, but we don't want to look at it because our main 90% comes from 18 to 35. Okay? So the audience, again, segmentation is something you probably don't want to get into now. This is something you want to get at step 2, 3. Step 1 is to get this account up and running, get the tracking code in there, start looking at those basic things I mentioned on my presentation. Those are the basic things you should look for. Everything else is a step 2, 3, 4, 5. And believe me, there will be hundreds of steps with this because it keeps on growing. We are not even talking about half the functions in here, which are probably more advanced. So there's a lot more. Start with basic, and then you move forward with it. Okay? Any other question? No? Yes? We all understand? Yes. Okay? So again, it brings us to our conclusion on Google Analytics. Okay? I know there's a lot going on there. We try to cover in a very short amount of time, but unfortunately, we can't go through every single step in there because I think there's step 1, which we all need to do, and then get to step 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay? Again, I think after this, we're done with marketing. We're done with how to look at our marketing. Obviously, this is the data that will tell us if our marketing worked or didn't work. Okay? So it brings us to conclusion of Google Analytics. And thank you for joining us. And that's it.